I'm Art Bell, and coming up in a moment, Zecharia Sitchin. He only has a limited time with us, and so we're going to try and cover as much as we can, as quickly as we can. All right, no delay. Now to New York, and here he is, Zecharia Sitchin. He should need no introduction. Those of you who have for years read this genre of material should know him. The 12th Planet, Stairway to Heaven, Genesis Revisited, The Lost Realms, When Time Began, The Earth Chronicles, Genesis Revisited, just unfolding now, not a rehash of current events, but a factual account of divine encounters. That's what this book is going to be about. Moving also into all kinds of metaphysical areas, even touching on the current rage of angels. And here he is from New York, Zecharia Sitchin. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Art.
Good morning. It is a great honor to have you on, and for about 2 years now, people have been asking me to get you on. So here you are. I'm not going to waste any time. I'd like to begin at the beginning, if we could. The 12th planet. Is it Dr. Sitchin?
Well, Mr. would do, Zecharia would do.
What is, in a nutshell, if you can do it, the theory of the 12th planet? What is the 12th planet?
Well, you just said that not to waste time, you want to start at the beginning. And this is really starting at the beginning. Because according to ancient texts that have come to us from Mesopotamia, today's Iraq, going back almost 6,000 years, they provided us with a cosmogony dealing with how the solar system came into being, and tell us that soon after the solar system, where we are, our part of the universe, as soon as it came into being about 4 billion or so years ago, an invader from space, a planet ejected from its own solar system somewhere else, was passing by, was drawn into the center of our solar system, had a collision with another planet that existed at that time between Mars and Jupiter. In that collision, half of that other planet was smashed into bits and pieces, became mostly the asteroid belt that still orbits between Mars and Jupiter. Part of it became a comet that visits us from time to time, and some of those comets are in the news. And the other half of the destroyed planet was shunted or thrust into a new orbit and became our planet Earth. That invader, which was called in the ancient text by the Sumerians Nibiru, which meant planet of the crossing, later renamed by the Babylonians in honor of their national god Marduk, became also a member of the solar system with a vast elliptical orbit that lasts about 3,600 years, 3,600 of our years,
Yes.
Because to that planet and whoever might be on it, one orbit is just 1 year, and that explains such other problems as the so-called immortality of the gods from Greek mythology, etc. So that planet became a member, and according to the Sumerians, the 12th member of the solar system, because they counted the sun. They said this is the family of the sun. They included the moon as a member in its own right for reasons that are given in those ancient texts. And 10 planets, the 9 we know about, and one more, the 12th member. So from our astronomical viewpoint, it would be the 10th planet. It is the planet which is the 12th member. So the publisher of my first book, and by the way, it was 20 years ago, condensed this title, The Planet Which is the 12th Member, and made it the 12th planet. So this is the story of the 12th planet, and it goes back to the very beginnings of our own solar system, of the Earth and the heavens as we know them. And this is really the source of the biblical tale and the beginning of the book.
When do you believe this 12th planet will return?
Well, first of all, let me say I believe that it will return because this would be a fulfillment of all the prophecies in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, and in the writings, the Holy Scriptures of other nations in antiquity.
What is the best estimate of its return time?
Can we go to the next question?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
There is a comet that has been discovered by two amateur astronomers,
Right.
now named Hale-Bopp. First thought to be as big as 1,000 miles across, now thought to be at least 100 miles across, with a dust cloud about it, 2.5 million kilometers wide. It's big, very, very big, out beyond the orbit of Jupiter. They have calculated its return time, very interestingly, at about 3,600 years. Is there any correlation?
Probably, but let me explain why. The orbit of Nibiru, as the Sumerians called it, that other planet, which is given by them mathematically as 3,600 years, because these orbits shift, even Halley's Comet, which has a short period orbit of some 75 years, is sometimes 75, sometimes 77, because as the celestial bodies travel in our solar system and are affected by other planets, the orbital period changes slightly. So 3,600 is a mathematical number that can shift a little either way. Has a retrograde orbit. Now all the members, mostly, virtually all the members of our solar system, due to the way they were created, orbiting from some kind of nuclear or nebular cloud around the sun and then coalescing, orbit in what we call a counterclockwise direction. Nibiru orbits in a clockwise, and thus it's called retrograde direction,
right.
and that's the collision, because when one planet, the older one, orbited one way, Nibiru came in another way, there was a collision. So first of all, this is a retrograde orbit. Second, according to the biblical prophecies, and I deal with them especially in my book Genesis Revisited, which you so kindly mentioned, it will appear, or at least according to expectations in biblical times, it would appear when it does return in the constellation of Sagittarius.
Which is where Hale-Bopp is.
Right. Okay. Now, and then it comes into our into the center of the solar system at an angle, at a maybe steep angle. So here we have this so-called comet. I say so-called because nobody's really sure what it is.
You're right.
That was first discovered by the two amateur astronomers, which, by the way, says a lot for so-called amateurs, who have discovered more than the regular astronomers.
It is true.
That it appeared beyond almost where Neptune is, and it was already extremely bright. Now, as you obviously know and your listeners know, the comets attain the head or the coma and the tail and become visible only when they near the sun.
Yes.
Because then it's then when they begin, the material begins to evaporate, etc. Now, out there, it is not evaporating yet, and already it is extremely bright, tens and even hundreds of times more bright than, for example, Halley's Comet was.
Yes.
Secondly, it has a retrograde orbit.
But let me stop you for 1 second and ask you, if it must be near the sun for this brightness to be apparent because of the evaporation of the snowball or whatever it is they think comets have, then where is the energy coming from now to create this brightness?
Well, okay, that's one of the enigmas. So that's why I say so-called comet, because a normal comet does not become that bright at all, and does not become that bright that far out. So first is the brightness. Then there is the retrograde orbit. Then there is the appearance from Sagittarius, and then there is this orbit of estimated 3,500 years, which is pretty close to the 3,600 of Nibiru.
Sure is.
So I did get many calls out from friends and others who said, is it Nibiru, is it Nibiru? Because they and I too would of course want to see Nibiru back in our own time. And I don't think it's Nibiru, because Nibiru, according to all the sources, including current astronomers who call it Planet X and have been searching for it, and I deal with that too in my writings, is at least 3 to 4 times the size of Earth. And Hale-Bopp is at least, as you mentioned, 100 miles across. At some point, the estimates went much higher. If it is 1,000 miles, as I did hear too from my sources, then it is already not a comet. It's a small planet. It comes to almost match the size of some of our smaller planets, certainly some of the moons that are planetary size of Jupiter and Saturn.
Yes, President.
So it's not Nibiru, but in my opinion, it is a harbinger of Nibiru.
A harbinger of. Can I come back now to the question, or do you not wish to answer it?
No, go ahead.
If Nibiru should return, what would be the effect on our Earth?
I mean, when I say we, I, let me speak for myself. I don't know. The one time when it returned, it brought about the deluge, the great flood, that again is mentioned and described in the Bible, but as other chapters at the beginning of Genesis, the biblical description is just a condensed narrative of much more extensive and much more detailed Sumerian and Babylonian text. So once it caused the catastrophe that is recorded worldwide as the deluge, the biblical prophecies, the Old Testament prophecies about the day of the Lord and etc., speak of earthquakes and other effects on Earth. But that, of course, depends where Earth is in its orbit around the Sun, and where Mars and Jupiter are. When Nibiru is, it's what is called perihelion, meaning the closest path nearest the Sun. So if the other two major planets between us and Nibiru, if we are on Nibiru side of the Sun and not on the opposite Sun, so it is very difficult to predict what would happen.
All right, I would like to ask you about this. Worldwide now, I've had many prophets on my program. Gordon Michael Scallion is a very good friend of mine, and he has predicted accurately, I'm sorry to say, the activation of the Ring of Fire. There are volcanoes reported every day now, new volcanoes, Etna, Vesuvius, both in danger of erupting, evacuation orders, volcanoes down in Central America, earthquakes all around the Ring of Fire. What's going on, Zecharia?
Ask your prophet. I'm not a prophet, you know. I'm sometimes asked what, you know, in one word, what would I call myself? Am I a biblical scholar? Am I a linguist? Am I a historian?
Yes.
Am I an archaeologist? And I'm a little or a lot of all of that. But I describe myself, sorry, or prefer to describe myself as a reporter, because due to my abilities or talents, I'm one of of a handful of people who can read the Sumerian tablets. So due to what I devoted my lifetime to, I'm able to report to people today what the ancient peoples knew and witnessed. And what they knew was amazing because they knew about the complete makeup of our solar system, which is more than we knew about 100 or 150 years ago. They knew of and described Pluto, which we have discovered 65 years ago, that's all. So they knew that their mathematics was incredible. Some tablets deal with mathematical calculations to the eighth degree, and so on and so on. I mean, the Sumerian civilization is amazing.
And if
you ask them, how could they know that? I mean, how would you know that without telescopes and microscopes?
Yeah.
They said, all that we know was taught to us by the Anunnaki. Now that word in Sumerian literally means those who from heaven to earth came. So the essence out of what I'm reporting is not just that there is one more planet in our own solar system, because if that would be all, then we would not be excited, or it wouldn't be more important than the discovery of Pluto 65 years ago.
What you are reporting is that there are or were others.
That is it. What I'm telling people is that all the ancient evidence shows that we are not alone in our own solar system. In other words, the search for so-called intelligent life should not be conducted out there, 5 and 6 and 10 light years away from us, where even if there exists, the communication or contact would be impossible, or not a practical reality. But there are others like us on a planet which is a member of our own solar system that comes to our vicinity every 3,600 years, and it is then that there were comings and goings between their planet and our planet, going back to at least about 450,000 years ago. So this is what we are talking about, and not just about one more planet.
So you are convinced, based on Sumerian translation, that all of this, that this ancient civilization that had this science absolutely did exist, and you are convinced of this beyond any shadow of a doubt?
That's exactly what I'm convinced of, and I hope that those who read my 6 books to date, and as you mentioned, one more is coming next month, titled Divine Encounters, I think the evidence is overwhelming.
So do I, Doctor. Stand by just one moment. We'll come right back to you. It is now the bottom of the hour. My guest is Zecharia Sitchin. When we return, we're going to ask him a little bit about the nature of time. He wrote a book called When Time Began. I believe we just looked 70 light years out into space, and we have photographs of the birthing of stars. We will ask Zecharia about that next. This is CBC. We only have Dr. Sitchin for the remainder of the hour, so I'm probably going to hog most of the time. He promises, though, to come back at another time and spend more time with us. And that is the subject for the moment, time. You wrote a book, Doctor, called When Time Began.
Yes, I did.
We just got... have you seen the photographs taken by Hubble? I'm sure you have.
I saw them, and they're incredible.
Incredible is correct. Doctor, how did we begin? When did time... Is there a beginning to time and an end?
I don't think so. I don't think so in universal terms. There is, of course, a universal time, dealing with the whole universe, which we are now only beginning to see in ever-growing detail. And those photographs by the Hubble Space Telescope are really amazing. So there's this great universe. The theories about its beginning are mostly focused on the idea of the Big Bang, that everything was some small ball that exploded.
Do you subscribe to that?
Based on what I read, because I'm not a astrophysicist, but based on what I read, it does make sense. The question is, of course, what made that nucleus explode and thus bring about our present day universe. And some of the mysteries in the universe are that the earlier discoveries this year showed that some components of our universe are older than the universe. So where did they come from? So this really leads us to, not to astrophysics, but to philosophy.
Yes.
And to the concept of God. And again, this is the subject I deal with in my new book, Divine Encounters. God. As a matter of fact, if those, and I know that you and your lovely wife have read my books from the very first one, The 12th Planet, you may recall that I end that book with the question if the Anunnaki who came to Earth from Nibiru created, in quotation marks, created us through genetic intervention in the process of evolution, if they created us on Earth, us meaning Homo sapiens, who created them on their planet?
Yes.
I'm asked many times if those visitors to Earth were considered by the ancient peoples as gods with a small g. Did they have a religion? Did they have gods? So these discoveries in space, these discoveries of the universe, really lead us, or should lead us, in my opinion, into looking at where we are in the heavens, where we are in the chain of life, not from a chauvinistic point of view. For example, I'm asked many times, how could others like us, similar to us, live on a planet that goes out into space, Nibiru, goes out into space where it's so extremely cold and everything is frozen, and then comes near us, and etc. How could life exist there? So my counter question is sometimes I wonder what the people from Nibiru thought about us, or earlier more primitive hominids, when they came here 450,000 years ago. Did they wonder how could life evolve on a planet so close to the sun? So the whole notion that life, intelligent life, can exist only on a planet our size with precisely our chemical components of oxygen and nitrogen, etc., and only at the distance from the sun of about 94 million miles that Earth is, that only here, and not in the immense universe with its diversity of galaxies and stars, and each star has planets, or most stars have planets. So we have to stop thinking in terms of those what I call chauvinistic terms.
Egotistical, really.
Yeah, because we are really an insignificant, Earth is an insignificant speck of dust in universal terms. And therefore when we ask each other, when people ask me, do you believe in God? I mean, first you have to define God. But in universal terms, of course I believe. I believe that as the Sumerians believed, and in a way I'm a descendant of the Sumerians, because Abraham was a Sumerian who migrated to Canaan, and I'm one of his descendants.
However, you do believe that our creators, I'll just use that word, may be God with a small g?
Well, those who used genetic engineering, and again I'm relying on a very detailed Sumerian text. I did not invent that. I mean, indeed, anything and everything in my books is based on ancient text, writings, and pictorial evidence. The only difference between me and other scholars in this field is that they treat all those texts as mythology, and I said to myself, what if this is true? What if all this really happened? And thus the books that have the overall title, The Earth Chronicles. So they came here, they found early hominids, like, let's call them ape-man, ape-woman. I don't want to use the scientific technical terminology of that is confusing and keeps changing, by the way, with more discoveries. So they found us, they needed workers, they needed manpower. They jumped the gun on evolution and mixing the genes of one of their males with the egg of, let's call her an ape woman, and Eve, by the way, that there was an Eve about the time that I said in my very first book, some 270,000 years ago, was confirmed. A few years ago, this year, it was confirmed through genetic studies that there was an Adam, also one single male ancestor, about 2,700, 2,070 years ago. So, I mean, anything that the Sumerians told us, that there are other solar systems, that planets can have more than one moon, that we have Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. Everything gets corroborated daily. For example, there were reports a few weeks ago about confirmation that another star, another sun, was definitely found out to have planets orbiting it.
That's
and
right.
the headline was a new discoveries challenge notion of Earth's uniqueness. And I asked, whose notion? Whose notion is being challenged? Not of the Sumerians. Their notions are being confirmed. So the whole thing really is mind-boggling.
It is the modern notions that are being challenged, of course.
It's the modern notion. Indeed, the subtitle of my book, Genesis Revisited, is Modern Science Catching Up with Ancient Knowledge, and of course it is.
All right, this is a philosophical question, but if the ancients that you talk of were to now revisit their creation, our Earth, and look at us, do you think, Doctor, they would consider us to be a success or just an experiment gone wrong?
Well, that is a very usually the one being questioned says it's a very good question if he doesn't intend to answer it. But it's not just a good question; it's a very serious question, and I think it really goes to the core of the issue, because to each one of us who is born and eventually goes through life till the end of our days, and struggles and raises a family and pays taxes and looks at the heavens and wonder what's next. Will there be wars? Will there be calamities? Will there be more? Will Earth will be hit by some of those comets? Will there be more earthquakes, etc.? The question you ask really goes to the core of it, because once they are back, and I believe that their emissaries are already back, and this explains the UFO sightings, etc.
You keep answering questions I'm about to ask. I wanted to ask you about that. You believe then this UFO phenomenon is real and represents some sort of monitoring of us?
Well, what exactly it represents, I cannot say, because I was not abducted, and nobody stuck a needle in my belly button, and I'm just taking the word of those who say. I'm accepting at least part of the TV evidence that we see of those flying objects, etc. So something is going on, whether it's exactly the way those who claim to have seen or been abducted say it or not, but somebody is back, and I must make it clear in the few minutes we have that these are not yet the Anunnaki, but these are their emissaries, because as I show in my books, such beings with that kind of heads, with the big eyes, with the peculiar non-human-like skins, etc., and with unclear sexual identification, male or female, etc., were seen and were depicted, and I showed the pictures of those depictions in my book. So the emissaries are back.
All right, you have seen the photographs, Doctor, haven't you, of the dissection of the supposed alien at Zecharia or Roswell, whichever it was?
I saw what was broadcast, yes.
And what were your impressions of that?
I still have to be convinced.
They were interesting creatures. I am also not convinced, but I have yet to...
I would like to be convinced, but I'm yet to be convinced.
Mm-hmm. there is more and more and more of this kind of thing coming to us. Are we being conditioned for what is to come?
Well, what I believe is that somebody is scouting us, and this happened the first time that they came here. First, they sent their scouts or their robots. By the way, these are robots. These are not the
biological.
These are androids. Let's call them. Okay. So what would happen when the Anunnaki themselves come back? That was your question. And,
yes, sir. Yes.
I'm not trying to evade it. The answer is not clear even to me, because the most described instance of one of the most recent, not the last recent, but one of the recent and the most described, both in the Bible and the Sumerian text, is the time of the deluge, the great flood. Mm-hmm. And according to the Sumerian text, the Bible condensed the two personalities, the two leaders, one of whom was called Enlil, meaning Lord of the Command, and one was Enki, meaning Lord of Earth. Enki was the one involved in the genetic manipulation that led to us Homo sapiens being created on Earth. And Enlil was the stricter one, the one that wanted everything to go by the law and not to digress, etc. So the complaints of Enlil, who instigated the notion of not telling mankind that the deluge is coming, so that mankind would be wiped off the face of the earth, and Enki connived with his faithful servant and worshipper, whom the Bible calls Noah, connived to save Noah and his family and some of the friends, etc. So there were two of them, or whose descendants now lead the Anunnaki, I don't know. The complaint of Enlil, which he used to justify his suggestion, let us not tell mankind about the coming catastrophe and let mankind be destroyed, were twofold. One, which the Bible stresses, that there was evil, men became evil. And in the Sumerian text it says that Enlil complained about the proliferation of mankind, that there are too many of them.
Yes.
Now, I definitely believe that two factors that would be taken into consideration, whether to give us more knowledge and technology, which was done in the past every 3,600 years, the transition from Old Stone Age to Mesolithic, Neolithic, Sumerian civilization, it's always at 3,600-year intervals. That the decision whether to continue that or whether to look to our demise again as at the time of the deluge would depend on these two issues. Mankind's evil, and we have seen plenty of it during World War II and the Holocaust, and many repeats of those phenomena like now in the former Yugoslavia, and what's happening in Africa, which doesn't get enough publicity, but the slaughter there is incredible.
Yes.
Of tribe against tribe, etc. So the evil is obvious. But the other thing, which is really up to us, but we are not doing anything about it, is the explosion of population, overpopulation. So I think that these are two things that we really ought to focus on and try to change the course of mankind before the day which the Bible called the day of the Lord, or the second coming of the kingdom of heaven to earth. Before that really takes place, we ought to change our ways.
All right, Dr. Sitchin, I want to ask you this. In an old movie called The High and Mighty, in the old days when that airplane's going across the Pacific, there came a point around mid-Pacific where they only had enough fuel to go forward to wherever they were going. They could not go back. A little red light would come on in the cockpit and say, point of no return.
That's correct.
And has humanity's little red light come on?
Yeah. I'm not a prophet. Again, I want to say I'm a reporter. But we were definitely, whether the red light went on or is about to go on, we are more or less at that point.
So we're very close or there.
Yeah.
All right, one more question. In your book, The 12th Planet, you addressed roughly the same subject as was addressed in Chariots of the Gods. Somebody wants to know, with regard to the ancient astronauts, how much did, if at all, Chariots influence your writing?
Well, it influenced me to the point that after spending almost 30 years researching my subject, which the research started when I was a schoolboy, I thought to myself, well, here somebody comes and explains it in his way what happened and talks about ancient astronauts, etc. So what's the point in my writing, in my book? And that was almost my decision not to write my book. But then I decided that there's really no point in all these books, including the book that you mentioned, just to speculate, like say, look at the pyramids of Giza now, who could have built them? All these millions of stone blocks, etc. And when you, the reader or the listener, shrugs the shoulders and says, I don't know, you say, well, only somebody from somewhere else could do it, an extraterrestrial, an ancient astronaut. No, I felt that to be serious, and I'm a serious researcher, and nobody challenged my facts, some disagree with my conclusions or my understanding of the ancient text, but nobody says there's no such text. I think that unless you say, if Earth was visited, number one, by whom? Not just to say ancient astronauts. By whom?
Yes.
Second, from where? From where? You can't say, well, the universe must be populated by others light years away. No, from where? It has to be technically feasible. And thirdly, to say when. I mean, you can't say, in ancient times, thousands of years ago. You have to be specific.
All right, Doctor.
And finally, why? Why would anybody keep coming and visiting our planet unless there was a reason for it? And I answer all these questions in my very first book.
And you
why,
also,
when, from where, by whom?
Yes, and you will also answer them, I take it, and take questions. You're going to be, we've got to go, we're out of time, but you're going to be at Las Vegas Cashman Field Center Saturday, November 18th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Whole Life Expo, correct?
Thank you for mentioning it.
All right, and I will also give the number so people can pre-register. It's 1-800-332-0099. That's 1-800-332-0099. And we did not have enough time, Dr. Sitchin, so you promise to come back?
And we'll deal with the issue of time.
The issue of time. Dr. Sitchin, it has been a great honor to have you on the program, and I look forward to your coming back.
Thank you very much.
Take care, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Zecharia Sitchin. And we got, fortunately, we were able to cover a lot of things that I wanted to cover, not nearly as much as I wanted to cover, but many of the current events that I'm sure you wanted answers from Dr. Sitchin about. So there you've got it. Again, he's going to be in Las Vegas on Saturday, November 18th, and the pre-register number is 1-800-332-0099. In some markets, it's arrivederci. For the rest of you, we'll be right back. Zecharia Sitchin, one of a small number of Orientalists who can read the Sumerian clay tablets, which trace Earth's and human events to their very earliest times, was born in Russia, raised in Palestine, where he acquired a profound knowledge of modern and ancient Hebrew and of other Semitic and European languages, the Old Testament, and the history and archaeology of the Near East. He graduated from the University of London, majoring in economic history, having attended the London School of Economics and Political Science, and after a writing career as a journalist, began writing his Earth Chronicles series of books.
Many thousands of years ago, a race of extraordinary visitors to planet Earth deciphered the cosmic code and used genetic engineering to short-circuit evolution and bring about us, Homo sapiens. Their footprints include the vast monolithic structures on Earth and the surface of Mars. Zecharia Sitchin, internationally acclaimed author, biblical scholar, and Orientalist, reconstructed in his books the events on Earth from the time the Anunnaki, those who from heaven came to Earth, had come here for gold, created Adam as a primitive worker, and after the deluge gave mankind increasingly sophisticated knowledge every 3,600 years, when their planet, Nibiru, comes closer to Earth. But the knowledge embedded in the cosmic code, his latest book, by the way, remained an enigma. And so we'll ask him about cosmic code, and here he is once again on the program, Zecharia Sitchin. Welcome back to the program, Zecharia.
Good evening, guys.
Great to have you. You are back in, where are you, in New York?
In New York, New York City.
New York City, okay. How many books now have you written?
8.
8 books.
8. And they've been translated into 14 languages, and I have a worldwide interest in what I had to say, and I'm really happy to be on your program, Art, after some brief interval. Thank God, only brief.
Yes, well, there should be, then there will be another brief interval, and you promise me that you will come and spend more time next time.
I always keep my promises.
Okay, good. I think everybody should be familiar with your theory of the 12th planet, but maybe you could take 1 second for those new listeners, and there are many, who have never heard it, and tell them what it is.
Okay, if there are still any that are left that are not familiar. Briefly, it is, my 8th book started with the 12th planet 22 years ago, and it's still going strong. And it dealt with the issue of, are we alone? Are we alone in the universe? Are we alone in our solar system? And it answered the question by saying, based on archaeological evidence and texts that were considered sacred in antiquity, and some of them, like the Bible, are still held sacred and divinely inspired to this day. And the answer was that yes, there is one more planet, not out there light years away from us, but in our own solar system, from which intelligent beings started to come and go between their planet and our planet about 450,000 years ago. As you mentioned, their purpose for coming here was selfish. They needed gold, which is still the only perhaps retainer of value compared to the paper currencies that are current.
Zecharia, let me ask you this. Why did they need gold? I've always wondered about that. I understand why we consider gold to be valuable, but of what value was it to them? Well,
not for coins and not for currency and not for jewelry, but because, and this is the evidence, the answer that comes to us from primarily the Sumerian writings. They apparently were losing atmosphere on their planet, which depended on its internal heat and on its own atmosphere. And if they would have lost it, they couldn't survive. And they tried to create a shield of gold particles to protect their atmosphere and their planet and to be able to survive. And at the beginning, they thought they'll get gold here the easy way from the waters of the Persian Gulf, but when it didn't work, they went to Southeast Africa, started mining, and there's evidence of mining 80 and 100,000 years ago. And at some point, when the few of them who were here, astronauts who were turned to the job of toil in the mines, mutinied. A Sumerian text describes very vividly the mutiny. Any of your listeners who have access to ancient literature may look up the so-called epic or myth of Atrahasis. And in the course of the mutiny, the chief scientist, his name was Enki, said, I have a solution. Let us create a Lulu Amelu, a primitive worker. And when the others questioned him, said, how can you create a new being? He said, oh no, the being that we need already exists. All we have to do is put our genetic mark on it. And then there are texts that describe a course, a trial and error of genetic engineering, trying to combine their genes with those of the hominids that already existed on Earth until finally a perfect model was achieved. And what I'm doing, Art, in my new book is not just retelling this general tale, but what I said to myself is, if we would know, like a watchmaker, who, if he knows how the watch was put together, knows how to repair it, if we would study those ancient texts in detail, step by step, of how the genetic combination process took place and such texts exist, we would be far ahead in repairing the genetic defaults that are really the cause of our sicknesses. So what I've done in this new book, The Cosmic Code, is really take it from the general to the individual. There was the general story which I've told in the previous books,
yes,
and now I'm dealing with the issue of how can it affect, how can it cure each one of us individually.
How can it affect, how can it cure each one of us individually? What is the answer to that question? In other words, what is there in the cosmic code that would be of interest to or value to an individual?
There are, for example, texts that describe how the two Anunnaki, the chief scientist and the chief medical officers, trying to bring about what they call the perfect model, the Adam, how they tried by adding or detracting or subtracting this gene or that gene, came up with beings that had some defect. For example, if they did it this way, then the being that they produced had only one kidney, or was deaf, or some of them described what we call a genius or some idiots or idiot savants that have a very low IQ, but they can really play fantastic music. They can remember music without notes. And all these instances are described in the text. What I'm saying that if others, not me, because I'm not a biologist, I can read ancient tablets, but I'm not a biologist, I'm not a geneticist, but I see enough there that if people who are in the field and who are providing us almost daily with these headlines that here they find a way how to reach the stem cells, and here they find a way how to fight cancer, etc.
Yes.
If they would see detail by detail how we were made, how we were created step by step genetically, there would be a shortcut and time would be saved, and they would be able to cure us and help avoid the maladies, especially the genetic ones, much quicker.
Well, we are then actually the descendants. We are the slaves of extraterrestrial visitors. Slaves. We were created to dig for gold, to mine for gold for the Anunnaki. Now, we are...
At the beginning.
At the beginning, yes. But now we are unraveling the human genome. As you said, we're getting very close. Just a few more years. And my question, Zecharia, is when we do unravel it and we begin to modify our own genetic structure and use more of our brains and cure our sicknesses, the next time the Anunnaki come back, they're going to be rather surprised, aren't they?
I don't think so, because at the beginning, indeed, they just needed us for manpower, creating us as hybrids, and then through a second genetic manipulation, which is the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, gave us the ability to procreate. But after the flood, after the deluge, they treated us as partners, not as workers for them, not as slaves, and started to give us knowledge. We call it civilization. And again, the texts, which I now go into detail in this new book, The Cosmic Code, describe the methods by which that knowledge was transmitted and given to us. And because I've wondered, for example, many are familiar with the biblical tale of Moses going up to Mount Sinai and God dictating to him for 40 days and 40 nights information or instructions,
yes,
which is spread over pages and pages and pages in the Bible. And all that was, according to the same Bible, written on just 2 stone tablets. So in what language was the dictation made? How could so much information be contained just on 2 tablets which Moses could carry? There are Sumerian tales how much vaster information was carried on whatever, computer chips. I say this because we don't know better technologically. That could be hundreds of them carried in one hand. So in what language, in what code? Because all that, as is clear from both the Bible and from Mesopotamian texts, was transmitted through encoding in a kind of a shorthand. And I'm trying to give the answer is the new book. And that information is also the basis for all the prophecies and other events that happened in the last millennium BC. So it is a vast yarn. I'm trying to tell it in the new book as concisely as possible with illustrations, etc. And hopefully it will serve its purpose, and that is to stimulate interest by people whose business or profession it is to look at those ancient texts now with a more microscopic and believing eye.
Would you please, now, when we talked the other day before you came on the program, you told me about a Catholic priest who had been following your work.
Yes.
Father Charles Moore.
Yes.
And I'm going to have Father Moore on Thursday night.
Oh, wonderful.
So he's going to be here. I am very, very curious how a Catholic priest embraced your information, Zecharia. How did that happen?
Well, he should really speak for himself, but may I say this, that about 2 years ago, a Sitchin Studies Day was conducted in Denver, and he was one of the participants that contributed to the studies of that day. Others were some college professors and others. And all those proceedings are available in a book titled Of Heaven and Earth, and I hope we'll tell people how they can get it. And so they can read and not just wait for the interview with you. But what he said was this, that number one, what I did was I provide a bibliography of the Bible. I give all the ancient sources on which the Bible is based. So to understand the Bible, read Sitchin, he said. Secondly, he said, in order to grasp the immensity of a cosmic God with a capital G, you have to accept the evidence of God's present on earth with a small g, which were the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came. And if, as I point in this new book, if you understand that they too had God with a capital G, the one that we really should accept and venerate, the cosmic God, then he says everything falls into place, and any doubts people have about the veracity of the biblical story falls away, and the whole thing becomes much clearer. There were messengers, there were emissaries of the creator of the universe who came here. You asked me why did the Anunnaki come here. They thought that they're coming for their own selfish purposes. But indeed, they were only carrying out some cosmic plan by the God of the whole universe, and I have no doubt, and the book also deals inter alia with the issues of what is the difference between fate and destiny, that we too have a destiny. The fact that we were genetically engineered is not an accident, is not the will of just some visitor to Earth 300,000 years ago. I think this is part of the destiny, part of the godly, with the capital G plan, and that one day we will repeat the same thing. We will go to some other planet, and for our own selfish reasons, and end up doing the same thing and carrying the seed of life from one planet to another, from one solar system to another.
Well, isn't there a pretty good parallel, Zecharia, in what early Americans did with slaves from Africa? Isn't it very much like that in a lot of ways? We brought them here to work for us, didn't we?
Yes, that was the excuse.
And we sort of kept them down and in their place for so many, many years. And then finally there was a kind of a consciousness raising on our part, not just theirs, but ours as well. And you're saying that cosmically, basically, the same thing occurred with the Anunnaki.
Yes, you can find many parallels in that.
Yes. All right, stay right there. We're at the bottom of the hour. Zecharia Sitchin is my guest. His latest book is The Cosmic Code. It begins to get very specific from the Sumerian text about the message and what it can do for you, what it can do for us. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM.
Talk with Art Bell in the Kingdom of Nye. From east of the Rockies, dial 1-800-825-5033. West of the Rockies, including Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico, 1-800-618-8255. First-time callers may reach Art at area code 702-727-1222. And you may call Art on the wildcard line at area code 702-727-1295. To reach Art from outside the U.S., first dial your access number to the USA, then 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM from the Kingdom of Nye with Art Bell.
It is. And my guest is Zecharia Sitchin. He is known worldwide. He is published worldwide, beginning with the 12th planet, and now the newest, the latest, the most detailed, The Cosmic Code by Zecharia Sitchin. That's what we're talking about, and we'll be right back. In The Cosmic Code, Zechariah's latest book, the newest entry in a lifetime of research and writings based on Sumerian clay tablets, the Bible, and archaeological evidence in the Old and New World, Zecharia Sitchin lifts the veil that has separated humanity's fate from its destiny and dares reveal the nature of prophecy in the Old and New Testaments and the secret code that links mankind to the stars. In doing so, he reconstructed the dramatic events of the last millennium BC, when a god, small g, returned to Earth, and another came back from exile, and the last king of Babylon heard prophecies of the end days. And I still have a hard time, Zecharia, understanding how any Catholic priest could accept the presence of gods with small g's.
Well, you'll have Father Charlie to ask, and I think he's a better man to answer than me. I'm not a Catholic priest, but all those that truly believe in the biblical tales, believe in angels, believe in emissaries, and that's really what the Anunnaki or
the gods of antiquity with a small g, where they were just emissaries and angels. And once you read the word, for example, the term angel, which in Hebrew is malach, literally means emissary. Does not mean one with wings, means emissary. So it is very easy once you grasp the difference between God, the Creator with the capital G, and his emissaries with the small g. I think everything falls into place, but you will have him to ask. But may I say this, Art, when I, in my writings, or now on the air, speak of the ancient texts with all their information, genetic information, encoding information, etc., people may say, well, we don't read Sumerian, we don't read Akkadian, we don't even know Hebrew, so we sort of have to take what Zecharia Sitchin says in trust, though there's no argument by anybody that those texts exist and they say what they say, except other scholars say, well, yes, there is such a text, but this is a myth. And I say, no, it's not a myth. These things really happen. But there's evidence all around us. And I've been traveling, sometimes by myself to research, sometimes with small groups of my fans, to look at the evidence which is spread, as you said, both in the old world and the new world. And I've been just barely 2 months ago in Syria and Lebanon. In Lebanon, there's a place called Baalbek, which anyone can visit. Now it's a little more safer than it used to be. In the Cedar Mountains there, the Sumerian text, they call it the landing place. It is a immense structure with an immense stone platform that rises many, many feet, almost 100 meters high, built of colossal stone blocks, some of them weighing well over 1,000 tons each, which someone in antiquity, according to the evidence even before the flood, quarried, picked up, and put in place, stone upon stone, that withstood all the earthquakes and other natural and man-made assaults on the place. And when I was there trying to figure out whether it was really a landing place the way the Sumerians called it, and then just 2 weeks later, it was at Cape Canaveral, the night there was a launch there of the shuttlecraft, I realized that indeed this was a giant stone-made launching pad. If you go to Jerusalem, the so-called newly opened archaeological tunnel along the Western Wall, and I say that Jerusalem served after the flood as mission control center, you also come upon 3 colossal stone blocks weighing almost 600 tons each that somebody again quarried, brought over, and then placed in place, not on the ground, but lifting them and pushing them into place. And that's something, other evidence of pre-diluvial or certainly prehistoric activities by someone that people can see with their own eyes. There's even, a much smaller object. I take pride in achieving a great achievement that the Archaeological Museum in Istanbul in Turkey has kept an object that was discovered 25 years ago that really depicts a one-man spacecraft. And they did not put it on exhibit claiming that it's a fake. I showed them that there's reason to doubt whether it is a fake, maybe it is not a fake, and persuaded them to put it on exhibit so that people could come and judge for themselves. So there's evidence like that all around us. People do not have to devote a lifetime to studying Sumerian or Akkadian or Egyptian hieroglyphics, and I really urge people to go to these various places, to the various museums. In the British Museum, and I give illustrations in my books, there is a round tablet that really depicts the root the space travel route between Nibiru and our planet, which they call the seventh planet, as anyone would who comes in from the outside into our solar system. So the evidence is all around us, and I mention it, I show illustrations, but people can go and see with their own eyes, and I think this is really the beauty of the fact that they don't really have to rely on me saying this text says this or that text says that. People should really have an open mind and seek or search for the truth by themselves.
Zecharia, is humanity's destiny to become emissaries with a small g?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the scriptures, if that's the right word to refer to them, say that the last things will be the first things. The first things are the last things. This is stated by all the prophets of the Old Testament. This is repeated in the New Testament book of Revelation. And there's no doubt, and this is part of the answer of this code, that how could prophecy exist unless somebody could refer to records or information of the first things and an indication that this will be repeated. There are cycles, there are repetitions, and not only for events on Earth, or not only the comings and goings every 3,600 years, but cycles like that and repetitions in the universe. And what was done to us, we will go and do to others. This is our destiny.
Well, it's the way it works with parents and children, so I imagine it would work that way between creators with a small g and their creations. I can imagine that would be true.
Yes.
Where is your book, Cosmic Code, now available?
Well, it's available in all major bookstores, but there are other things that are not readily available, like the book that I mentioned that records what Father Charlie Moore and others have said, which is of heaven and earth. There are 2 videos of mine, and if people would call, may I?
Yes.
888-519-8481. I'll repeat, 888-519-8481. I think if they actually buy some of the video or this book of heaven and earth, they may even get as a bonus, as a special for my appearance on your talk show, Art, the Cosmic Code for free. So.
Okay, that's the number again is 888-519-8481. Is that correct? Zecharia? 888-519-8481.
Yes.
Okay. You just cited some archaeological evidence, very ancient evidence. What other evidence would you cite? There are many people who say if all this was true, there should have been great amounts of evidence all over the earth, if not above, then below ground.
Well, I mentioned some of the evidence, which people call archaeological evidence, but some I know question it by saying if they were really here, and if they came and went, and if they did this and they did that, where is the screwdriver? This is how we among us say it's the question of the missing screwdriver.
Yes.
But my answer is this: if they had the technology 450,000 years ago to come and go between their planet and our planet, what would be our technology in 450,000 years from now?
Hard to imagine.
Will we still be using screwdrivers? Will we still be using computers based on electronics? Or will we, as the indication is, and I deal with it in my new book, will we use DNA for computing, for retaining and transmitting information? Will we be using metals that rust? Or will we use biodegrading materials? So in order to answer or deal with this question, that we seek the evidence based on what we know. I sometimes say, I show an illustration of 2 astronauts, 2 Anunnaki, saluting a rocket ship. But I myself, if this were shown to me 50 or 100 years ago, I would say, well, there are 2 beings saluting a very large pencil. And if somebody would say, no, that's a rocket,
yes.
I would say, what? A rocket? What's a rocket? So we are all, I myself included, we are captives of our technology. When the text describe how the Anunnaki had or retained or kept their information on some tiny bits of something, I say, well, it's something like computer chips. But will we use computer chips 500,000 years from now? Will we use, I sometimes say, it is really funny to me, all this search called SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Yes, I interview people from...
Not for beings, but for intelligence.
Yes.
Out there, and it's done with the aid of looking for radio waves. And I say, how fortunate we are that the search is done today and not 100 or 200 years ago, because then the search would be for evidence of bonfires. Because isn't that how you signal from one mountain or one place to another? Why not telepathy? Why not laser beams? Why not? I don't know. So just to assume that our technology is the dominant in the universe is really, well, I don't want to use any harsh language. It is not reasonable.
Zecharia, who was Jesus? Was Jesus the Son of God with the big G?
Well, I have not dealt yet in my books with this issue, and the question does come up. I've been traveling, I've been addressing large audiences or having interviews on the air, and I feel like that there's a need. I really must deal with this issue, and
yes.
To me, it is not the question of was a certain person the Son of God, because this really diminishes the subject or the fact that so many millions venerate this personality, because there were many others. There were Egyptian pharaohs before Jesus who claimed that they are sons of God. Alexander the Great rushed from Macedonia to an oasis in Egypt, and that some say was the real reason for his conquest, in order to verify a rumor that existed in the court of Macedonia that his real father was not King Philip, but was an Egyptian god, the god Thoth, and he went all the way to the oasis of Siwa to consult there an oracle and said that this was confirmed. So to call somebody the Son of God was really not only nothing new, but was, I think, even degrading. I think the issue is that at that time there was messianic expectation that things would happen, that a contact with the cosmos, with God, with the capital G, is imminent. And I think this is really the issue to face or tackle, which I intend to do, hopefully, in one more book.
Well, good.
Concerning Jesus.
Is it possible, I have something for you to consider, Zecharia, that if we had a sample of the DNA of Jesus, now there are many recorded miracles performed by Jesus, is it possible that if we had a sample of his DNA, that we would find subtle or even large differences in the DNA?
Well, this is a hypothetical question. You may be really making a very important suggestion, because if indeed the what is it called in Turin, the Shroud of Turin,
yes,
contains remainders of the blood of Jesus, then it has the DNA of Jesus.
Yes, that's correct.
And I think that what you have just asked as a question should be made into a very forceful suggestion, and something that whoever possesses that shroud, I don't know if it's the Vatican or just a certain church in Italy, in one place, I think that you really raised a tremendous issue, and something that ought to be done and not just to be speculated upon.
All right. We have very little time. Of course, east of the Rockies, you're on the air with Zecharia Sitchin. Where are you, please? Where are you, sir?
I'm in Babylon.
Babylon.
Babylon?
Yes, Babylon, Long Island.
Babylon, Long Island, New York. All right.
Sort of appropriate name, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Mr. Sitchin, in your Sumerian writings, where these non-human beings came down and talked to the Sumerians, they mentioned the planets as they telling how the origin of the Earth, how we were knocked out of orbit. Like these planets had a consciousness, and I was just wondering why they would relate the story like that. Is it possible that they believe that planets have a consciousness to them, some sort of intelligence?
No, not consciousness is not the right word, but they did consider those who came to Earth as visitors and taught the Sumerians. They did consider planets as living objects, not as dead bodies, but as something that has its own life cycles and history and origin and a beginning and an end, perhaps. So to them, planets were living organisms, the way the Greeks later on referred to Gaia. And there's a whole discussion, even academic circles, they call the theory of Gaia, that planets are really living organisms.
Well, yes, there are also modern astronomers like Professor Van Flanderen who believe that there is a great deal of energy within all planets, and that suns, in fact, derive their energy from the planets that revolve around them. And that, of course, would answer the question of how Nibiru is able to survive, though it travels far outside the sphere of our sun in a very long cycle. So there are even modern astronomers that I think support a lot of what you say, Zecharia. Listen, we're out of time. See, we're out of time already. we just got started.
Well, I'll come back, I promise.
All right, you really must do that, all right?
Thank you.
In the meantime, I wish you all the luck with your new book. Where are you going to be?
Right now, I try to sleep in my own bed for a week or two because I've been invited to speak, and I did speak in Vienna and in Zurich and in Mexico, and I've been all over, and it's time to stay put to celebrate Thanksgiving with my family and welcome the new year here.
Good for you, Zecharia. Next time, a longer show, my friend.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
That is Zecharia Sitchin, upon which so many people base their work. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM.
A man who needs no introduction. He is known and studied worldwide. He is a legend in his own time. Zecharia Sitchin, who, by the way, has some breaking news, an exclusive for us tonight that he'll be telling us about. As I speak to you, the desert devil winds are blowing. It's 40 miles per hour plus out there. The winds are howling across the desert, so think about that wherever you are. You probably have better weather than we do. I would like to welcome a new affiliate once again, KRKY. Yet another one in Dillon, Colorado, 930 on the dial. KRKY, Dillon, Colorado, 930 on the dial. Hello there, M.R. Murray. He's GMPD there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to be on the air in Dillon. You have no idea what you're in for. You're about to find out. Remember, stations, we do pre-feeds 3 hours prior to the start of the live show. We do 3 hours of pre-feeds from the previous night. Going all the way back east where it's late. We've only got an hour with Zecharia Sitchin, so you know who he is. The world knows who he is. You know about what he thinks about the Anunnaki. And I think you know that he does all this, and this is why people listen to Zecharia, not because he pulls his information from the cosmic behind, but because he pulls his information from ancient knowledge, ancient writings. So what he has to say really counts. I suggest you listen very closely. Zecharia, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Art.
Good morning to you.
It's good to be on the program again with you.
Yes, it's been a long time, hasn't it?
Well, at the right moment, we somehow managed to get together.
Yeah.
And there are really many exciting things to talk about tonight.
Okay. I think that people understand, well, maybe they don't, your theory about the Anunnaki, and I suppose that can be briefly stated, but ancient knowledge, what you say to these people tonight, whenever you're on, doesn't come from just nowhere. It comes from translations and ancient knowledge, doesn't it?
Yes.
So, talk a little bit about where you get all of this information.
Okay. As I may remind your listeners, I'm sure many of them are familiar with my writings. My first book, The 12th Planet, was published exactly a quarter of a century ago, and based entirely on the writings, first of all, of the Sumerians, who wrote on clay tablets beginning some 6,000 years ago, then about the evidence left behind by the subsequent civilizations of the ancient Near East, the Hittites, the Egyptians, etc., and combining all that with the Bible, the Old Testament, and especially the book of Genesis. What I have found was that what others know about, but consider as myths, as mythology, was really the recording of highly sophisticated knowledge that in a nutshell told us the following. That soon after our solar system was created, it was invaded by a planet that was thrust out of its own solar system, was passing near ours, was drawn into the center of our solar system, had a collision with an existing older planet in our solar system. As a result of that collision, three things happened. The Earth and the Moon came into being, the asteroid belt came into being, and the invading planet got caught into a vast elliptical orbit around our sun, into our vicinity about every 3,600 years, and becoming thus the 10th planet, or as the ancients called it, the 12th member of the solar system, because they counted sun, moon, and 10 planets.
When it does come back, Zecharia, when it does come back, how close does it come to Earth?
Between Mars and Jupiter.
Between Mars and Jupiter?
Yes.
That should be quite something.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And according to those tales, that planet, coming from some other solar system in the cosmos, brought into ours and transmitted to what we call the planet Earth, the seed of life that we nowadays call DNA. Now, that happened billions of years ago. About 450,000 years ago, intelligent beings from that planet traveled in space, arrived on our planet in search of gold, at some point needing assistance, needing manpower, jumped the gun on evolution, and took the hominids who had already evolved on Earth, and combining their genes with those of the hominids, brought about some 300,000 years ago as Homo sapiens. This is the essence of the story.
We were created to mine gold for...
To mine gold.
Yeah,
but in time they gave us civilization, and if you check it, you see that the stages of our advancement happened in about 600 years.
Now, I wonder if that accounts, Zecharia, for why when we touch gold and feel gold and think about gold, especially if you just touch it, put gold in your hand, you're feeling something more than just something valuable. There's something, I don't know, there's something about gold.
Well, this infatuation with gold is really inexplicable unless you accept the ancient tale. The people in the Americas refer to gold as the tears of the gods, and so on. Now, against that background, Art, here I'm sitting a few weeks ago and reading the two parallel reports by the two teams that have deciphered the human genome.
They just deciphered the genome,
Yeah,
I think in middle February.
2 weeks ago.
And they did it way ahead of time. They said, wow, we really got done fast, much faster than we thought.
And we welcome that, of course. And they said that the human genome has about 30,000 genes, has about 3 billion letters of the DNA alphabet, but they are lumped into effective genes only about 30,000.
And they thought there were a whole lot more, didn't they?
They did, but they did.
We really got done fast, much faster than we thought.
And we welcome that, of course. And they said that the human genome has about 30,000 genes, has about 3 billion letters of the DNA alphabet, but they are lumped into effective genes only about 30,000.
And they thought there were a whole lot more.
But 30,000 is pretty complex. Then they found out two things, one that was highlighted in all the headlines, and one that you found hidden only and discovered only when you read the reports very carefully. The major finding was that the findings are humbling, because they discovered that we are no different from chimpanzees by no more than 1% of the genes. In other words,
awfully close.
We have 30,000, so about 300 of them make the difference between us and chimpanzees. We have barely twice as many genes as the fruit fly or some worm, etc.
Twice as many as a worm?
About twice, yes. And that they found and they really traced how the DNA that somehow arrived on Earth, and more they say through a comet, something from outer space brought it, which is corroboration of the ancient tale, and then how it grew through bacteria and invertebrates and vertebrates, like a tree of life, showing how we arrived with all the things we are proud of.
So then bacteria then had some job in the formulation of our present genetic structure.
Right.
Present genetic structure.
Right. Now here comes the sleeper. They found out that as they traced the genetic development on Earth from the lowly bacteria to the intelligent human beings, there are 223 precisely genes that cannot be accounted for through this progression from bacteria to invertebrates to vertebrates. And none other than the science editor of Newsweek referred to those genes as alien genes.
Alien genes?
Alien genes.
Okay, so
that's in Newsweek.
So now they've completed the whole genetic. It was amazing they did it so quickly in mid-February. This is really important for the audience to understand. Yeah, it took a few years, not as many as they thought, so we're simpler than they thought.
Right.
And then after everything is said and done, there's 223 genes that
cannot be accounted for through this evolutionary process.
Now,
when I read that word, alien genes, I said to myself, I'd better contact that science editor and everybody else, and the way to do that was to put the story on my website, which people, by the way, are welcome to look up. It's Sitchin.com.
Yeah, we've got a link.
And I said, and I called it the case of Adam's alien genes. Now, if you ask those scientific groups, how did we get those mysterious or unexplained genes? They say, well, at some point maybe a group of bacteria gave it to us.
In other words, they don't know.
Well, the Bible says that at some point the group, the entity, the divine beings that the Bible calls Elohim, which is a plural word in Hebrew, it should be translated gods, but usually translated God with a capital G, that they talked to each other and said, let us fashion the Adam in our image and after our likeness.
That's right.
Now, if the difference between us and chimpanzees is caused by bacteria, then you must say that it is a group of bacteria that got together and started to talk to each other and said, well, why don't we fashion an intelligent being to look like us? But we don't look like bacteria.
Well, some would say, perhaps, Zecharia, that those bacteria were directed by the hand of God. Big G.
Okay. So now we get to what I really want to, I don't know if it's shocking or not, but here it is. On April 8th, which is about 11 days ago, the New York Times carried an article on its front page, headlined, Evolutionists Battle New Theory on Creation. And the article said that the so-called creationists, who, disagree with the pure evolution, are up to some new tricks. First of all, they are not those Bible Belt guys. They are all scientists. And what they say is, well, yes, there was evolution, but at some point somebody interfered and this whoever, the intelligent designer.
The intelligent designer.
Right. And the whole new theory about which those who believe in evolution complain, because now it's scientists who say that, is called the intelligent design theory. Now, listen carefully, please. The fifth paragraph in the New York Times, and I'm reading from my copy, which is late city edition of April 8th, says as follows. This designer, the intelligent designer, may be much like the biblical God, with the capital G, proponents say, but they are open to other explanations, such as the proposition that life was seeded by a meteorite from elsewhere in the cosmos, or the New Age philosophy that the universe is suffused with a mysterious but inanimate life force. Now, the same story was carried on the web of the New York Times and must be the original early version. I have that in front of me as well. And the fifth paragraph in the website says as follows. This designer may be much like the biblical God, proponents say, but they are open to other explanations, such as the proposition that life was seeded by a meteorite from elsewhere in the cosmos, possibly involving extraterrestrial intelligence, or the New Age philosophy that the universe is suffused by a mysterious. Now, did you catch the difference?
Oh, yes, of course I did.
The words possibly involving extraterrestrial intelligence
yes, of course.
were excised
by
whoever in the late city edition of the New York Times.
Who would you imagine applied the pressure that made those words disappear, Zecharia?
Well, frankly, I have no idea. But I think, sometimes they say that one has to read between the lines, but in this case, one has to read the lines.
Oh yes, well, or try to imagine the missing lines. That's a riot. That's an absolute. So
well, now, this is the first time, by the way, Art, I mention it to anybody.
Well, now, Zecharia,
I'm letting you and your listeners have this.
The story, Zecharia. It is a scoop, and though, we have to say, let's think. What are the odds that? Oh, it was just a typo. In other words, somehow in that printing, it got mixed up and forgot that sentence.
Art, I didn't know that you're so generous.
I'm not. I'm just sort of. No. I'm trying to get the listeners out there to understand how unlikely it is that incredibly important sentence would simply just be there in the first place and then disappear in the second place. We can imagine all kinds of things about who got behind its disappearance. That's amazing, absolutely amazing. So I'm sure you're smiling.
Whoever excised it is another matter. The point is that in the original version of this article, on the front page of the New York Times, whoever wrote it and whoever accepted it in its original version actually accepted everything that I say the Sumerians said 6,000 years ago. And,
of course.
And to me, this is so exciting and sensational that I really don't sleep nights, Art, because I'm so overwhelmed by all these discoveries. Now, this is in genetics. Now, a day before the New York Times article, there is an article in a magazine called Science News reporting the findings of a French observatory that has been working, by the way, to my knowledge. I've tried to contact them from time to time about the search for what they call Planet X, meaning the 10th and the unknown.
Yes.
And they say, here's the opening paragraph in that report. Far beyond the solar system's 9 known planets, a body as massive as Mars may once have been part of our system, and it might still be there.
I read the same stories. Yes, I know. I read exactly the same story, and when I read it, I thought of you. Actually, they say that might still be there. Absolutely fascinating. Zecharia, we're at the bottom of the hour, so hold on. That's plenty to digest for one segment. Oh, my. So our genetic makeup is all recorded, duly recorded now. They're done. But there's these genes that they can't account. These alien genes is what they're calling them. And then there's that alien exorcism in the New York Times. Oh, my, I'm sure Zecharia is smiling. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM.
Take a ride. The phone is open at 1-775-727-1295. And to reach out on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the Premier Radio Network.
I don't know if you understand the significance of what you just heard, but I'd call a friend and have him listen to a replay, and I'd certainly be in tune for the next half hour. Then comes Dannion Brinkley. I'm Art Bell. Then you go to my website, as always, artbell.com. Go to and tonight's guest info, and you can go to Zechariah's website. You can read about everything he just told you and a whole lot more, so that you might understand why he's so excited right now, since science is beginning to underline what he thinks with regard to our origins. No small matter, our origins, right? So science is now underlying everything he's saying, and I'm sure put a big smile on his face, right?
You're asking me? You're telling me?
I can hear the smile. Yeah, that's good enough, and you don't get that very often on radio.
People say that whenever they want to take a picture of me at my lectures or seminars. They say, you never smile.
Oh, so the next time someone wants to...
Now I'm smiling.
The next time you want a good picture of Zecharia, you bring a copy of the New York Times with you, and you hold that behind the camera.
That's a good idea.
What do you think, Zecharia, that would happen if the Anunnaki came back? What would their intention be for us now?
Well, this is I of course pondered that question many times. Not only if they come, when they come, etc. Now we have to go back to, because I keep telling people who come to hear me. And by the way, if I may say this, on my website, any forthcoming lectures or seminars will be listed so people can look it up.
All right.
So they can write to me at my P.O. Box 577, New York, 10185.
Wait a minute, wait, that's too fast.
P.O. Box 577,
right?
New York, 10185.
10185. Okay.
I by the way, I'm so old-fashioned that I answer all my mail.
Do you really?
Every letter.
I would imagine a lot of people would write to you just to have a letter from you and to have your name.
That's fine too. I think if people take the time, if they read my books and think about them and take the time to write a letter to me, they're entitled to a response. So I really believe, and I keep stressing that the past is the future. You know, though my writings are rooted really in the Old Testament, but I'm familiar with the New Testament, and especially the book of Revelation, which repeats what the Hebrew prophet said, that the first things shall be the last things, and the last things are the first things. You know, Alpha.
Well, what is that? What do you think that means?
That means that things are cyclical, and what happened in the past will be repeated. And what we know is that in one instance, and that was the Great Flood, the deluge, according to the Bible, God decided that mankind did not turn out right, was evil, was whatever, and said, we will use the opportunity of this deluge that the earth will be flooded to wipe mankind off the face of the earth. And then 8 verses later, it says that the same God said, well, let me save mankind by telling a guy called Noah to build the ark and to take with him this and do that, and so that life on earth and mankind will not perish.
Yes, except that, of course, there was no admittance to 2 Nephilim onto the ark.
Well, so the more detailed tales of the Sumerians on which this biblical tale is based say that there were two leaders. One was named Enlil, meaning Lord of the Command, who was the strict one, and one was Enki, Lord of Earth, who was the chief scientist and was involved in the very genetic engineering which we discussed in the first part of this program. And each time the strict one said mankind is no good, it didn't turn out right, that they proliferate too much, they are evil, etc., etc. And I think you will agree with me, that especially in the last century, there was enough evil to justify mankind being punished. The other one, Enki said, no, these are they're really us, he said. You know, they have our genes. We intermarried with them. Many of their offspring are us. We cannot destroy them. Now, who is the leader now? If it's Enlil, I'm serious.
I know you're serious. You're talking about if they come back.
Yes, if he is the leader, and he leads the group that pays us the next visit, And he may say, I told you so. I told you so. They are evil. They are no good. Let's be done with them. If it's Enki, he may say, well, you know, some are bad, some are good, but after all, they are our creations. We are responsible for them. We gave them civilization. If they know how to use nuclear weapons, we taught them, because we the Anunnaki used nuclear weapons in the fights between us around 4,000 years ago. So now mankind also knows how to do it. So I really don't know who the leader is, and it may go either way.
You know, Zecharia, it's a little like being a Palestinian and watching for the next Israeli election, huh? Understand what I mean? In other words, yes, I think, so you got it.
You can think of many examples, but who knows? I really don't know.
That's a particularly good one, though. And of course, the Palestinians right now are finding out the last election was probably the guys who would have erased Earth. Anyway,
well,
that's what.
Without getting into politics, they didn't take the best offer that was given to them. So.
Anyway, but the point is, we have to. One safely, maybe not safely, but could one presume that there's been a continuing spiritual evolution for even the Anunnaki, politically and socially, in all this time, and as we are evolving spiritually, and that perhaps they would be kind to us.
Could be. Well, you know, if you really trace, as you know, from that very first book that was really the cornerstone, the 12th planet, there are 8 by now, the latest being the Cosmic Code, which really deals with the encoded messages in the biblical text, and I point out there that the way we run on our computer digitally is the way the code is in the Bible, because the letters are really representing numbers. So there is definitely been an evolution among them too. First of all, because those who were here represented several generations. There were those who originally just came from their planet, and many went back, some stayed. Then they had children and offspring. Then there was the intermarriage before the deluge. Then there were other so-called demigods. The second book that I wrote, The Stairway to Heaven, deals with the search for immortality. The so-called demigods, be it Sumerian or Egyptian, believe that they are entitled to the longevity of the so-called gods, with a small g. So there were many. They were not uniform. You're quite right in pointing that out.
Zecharia, wouldn't this be an important consideration now that we have unraveled the human genome? Wouldn't it be a sort of a race to see if we could begin manipulating our own genetic code before the Anunnaki return?
Well, first of all, I want to say that as far as cloning is concerned, that what we can do, we will do. No, Lord, nobody will stop us.
Yeah, but forget clones for a second. Think about just manipulation of our genetic. In other words, if we were originally designed by the Anunnaki as gold miners, then they would have designed our genetics so that we weren't as smart as we might be. We use 10% of our brain, I'm told. So
right.
If we're able to manipulate our own genetic code, by the time they get back, we could be, well, a whole new species.
And then
we could meet them on their own ground.
Well, aren't we trying to do that already by trying to get to Mars? And each time we get frustrated there.
Well, we have a new mission on the way now, you know.
Yeah, I know. Well, it will take us, 2-3 years to get there. But Mars is really the best example to point to and to discuss the issue that you just raised. Because there's absolutely clear photographic and other evidence that there are remains of artificial structures on Mars.
Oh, you have seen the new photographs?
Yeah, I've seen the new photographs. And
have you been hearing what Sir Arthur Clarke has been saying?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And Tom von Flandern and others. The Mars not only had little water, had actual seas and lakes, and had an atmosphere and was habitable.
That's right.
And the question is, even those like Arthur Clarke or Tom von Flandern or others who are on the establishment side of the fence say, look, these are not artificial structures. These are not natural structures. These are artificial. These are man-made, etc.
That's right.
They all stop at some threshold. And the question is, so if they are not natural, who built them? Who erected them?
Yes, of course.
And everyone, and this goes to the same article in the New York Times, everyone, when they see the word extraterrestrial, they get frightened.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I don't know, but here's an even better question. If we really do go to Mars, or our next probe finds evidence, absolute evidence of life, large life, as Sir Arthur Clarke said, perhaps even old life, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
There's going to be very important news, and will it get into the same New York Times that removed a sentence about aliens?
No.
In other words, would we be told?
Well, you and I know that so much is already known and is not being told. I've tried to, for example, in my book Genesis Revisited, I discussed the existence at that time hardly known. Now maybe more people know about it. That after some discoveries made in 1983. And the meetings between President Reagan and Gorbachev, a international commission was established under the Austrian State Department, but including representatives from all major powers. And its mission, as expressed in a document called the Declaration of Principles, was how to delay for 48 hours the news that a contact has been made with an alien intelligence.
48 hours.
Now, if you ask, the officialdom, and they say, is there another intelligence in the universe? They say, well, probably yes, but, with so many billions of stars and planets and galaxies and all that, but this is light years away, The chance of communication is nil. Now, if this is so, what is the point in delaying the news for 48 hours?
That's a very good point, and I'm trying to...
And I give in my book, Genesis Revisited, the text of that summary document signed by all those concerned a few years ago.
Gee, what would you do with 48 hours if you had it? Anyway, I can't think what you would do. Maybe you'd get the military out in the streets. I don't know. That'd be about the best you could do.
I know what they would do. What
would they do?
They would call Art Bell and say, can we be on your next program? That's why they need 48 hours.
I could schedule faster than that.
Well,
if I have to.
The only way is really to treat it as a joke, right? Because nobody can be serious and say if an alien intelligence, not beings, God forbid, but an intelligence, like a stone that can think and contacted us, we should delay the news for 48 hours.
48 hours. I've interviewed the people who run SETI many times, and they have always denied that there would be any
delay at all. And I've gone round and round and round with them about that. Listen, I want to ask you, Zecharia, before we run out of time, did you pick up the telephone and call up the New York Times and say, hey, guys, what happened to that sentence?
No.
You didn't?
No. First of all, I'll tell you the truth. When I saw that, when I read it for the first time, when I read the release of their website was the first thing I read.
Right.
And I saw this extraterrestrial, and I thought to myself, wow, on the front page of the New York Times.
Yeah.
And then others called me and said, hey, did you see that? They say maybe it's even an extraterrestrial intelligence that is the so-called the great designer, etc., etc. And then before when I arranged the papers, the document, I mean, there's so much more to talk about, so we'll have to do it another time. All the papers in this, including the front page, and I'm looking for that sentence, and I don't see it.
Right.
To myself, what did I imagine it? What about all those who called me about it? And then I read word for word, comparing paragraph 5, and I see that on the front page, the late city edition, it just continues as if those words possibly involving extraterrestrial intelligence were never in the text. So this revelation came to me as I was preparing for this interview with you.
Tonight, that fast, huh? My. Well, so they even had time to call them up. Will you do that?
I don't think I'll call them up because,
no. Well, some of my listeners will.
That's up to them, but I suggest that they look up the New York Times website from April 8, 2001.
Yeah. And then compare it to
and then compare paragraph 5 to the latest. But some people who called me had the edition of the New York Times, which had those crucial words.
So it was between editions that these words just somehow disappeared.
Well, somebody must have read it and said, hey, fellows,
The biggest contiguous typo in New York Times printing history.
Maybe there'll be a correction. I don't know.
Well, at the very least, if you don't call, I guarantee you a lot of my listeners will. Zecharia Sitchin, as always, it is an incredible pleasure to have you here. And every time you're here for 1 hour, I always say, hey, Zecharia, how come I always only get 1 hour? And you always say, oh, Art, next time we'll have more time.
No, well, there is the time difference. Now it's already 2 a.m. in New York.
Well,
and,
say the words anyway.
And I'm not as young as you are.
I know, but say the words anyway. Say sometime, Art, will do a longer show.
Sometime Art will do a longer show.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Zecharia. Well, that was something. That was really something, folks. We invite you to do your own comparison with regard to what the New York Times did. As always, think for yourself. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast.
This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell from the Kingdom of Nye.
If for any reason at all you missed the last hour with Zecharia Sitchin, find a computer and go listen to it. That's all I can say about Zecharia Sitchin. It was an incredible hour, and we've got incredible hours coming up. You're about to speak with a man, listen to a man who was dead. You talk about NDEs. Dannion Brinkley was dead for 20 minutes.
nights in white satin, never reaching the end. Letters I've written, never meaning to send. Beauty I'd always been, with these eyes before. Just what the truth is, I can't say anymore, 'cause I love you. Yes, I love you.
Want to take a ride? Call Art Bell from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach Art at 1-775-727-1222. The wildcard line is open at 1-775-727-1295. And to call Art on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell from the Kingdom of Nye.
If for any reason at all you missed the last hour with Zecharia Sitchin, find a computer and go listen to it. That's all I can say about Zecharia Sitchin. It was an incredible hour, and we've got incredible hours coming up. You're about to speak with a man